Hello everybody and welcome to my first episode on how to make electronic music. Now you might think this is a little strange for a first episode, but we're going to talk about mastering. What is mastering? Well, it's, in modern terms, making your song really as loud as it can be, or loud enough that a specific streaming service doesn't have to either raise the volume or squash the volume too much. Mastering, as we know it now, is sort of the process of trying to make your track as loud as possible without causing any noticeable distortion, but that's not really how you should view it. There are target loudnesses for a lot of streaming services, but we're going to focus on Spotify's minus 14 lufs. We're going to use Izotope Ozone 8 to do our mastering, and I'm routing the audio from Ableton through something called loopback, so if that doesn't work, then I don't know. So we're going to start by listening to the drop of this song and then seeing what we can pick out that needs fixing. Pretty good song. Well, now that we've heard that, I can hear it's pretty bass heavy, but the thing is, I don't actually need to go back and remix that because I like how it sounds. I like the very heavy bass bed, but I'll also zoom into the waveform. You can see my transients are only a little bit above my bass, but it's still enough that if I reduce that bass, those kick transients aren't going to get squashed when I use compression or a maximizer. So I'm going to open up Ozone 8 here. Wait for the little pinwheel to open. It's the nice pinwheel of death. All right. So Ozone 8, you open it up right now. If you don't have Ozone 8, by the way, it's $15 a month or $16 a month from Splice. And once you're done paying it off, you get to keep it. And that is an amazing deal, no matter how you look at it. So here's the equalizer, dynamics, that's sort of a compressor, and then your maximizer, which is really going to be your most important part, because if you mix well, maximizing is really the only thing you need to do besides a little bit of light EQ. So for the song, I'm going to listen, I'm going to look at the spectrum. Now it's already fairly loud, but how loud is it? After Ozone, I am going to place something called the Waves Loudness Meter. So I'm just going to close Ozone real quick. And we can hear that my drop is going at around minus 15 loops already. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So I'm going to go back to Ozone. And I'm going to check the peak. We can see that the RMS peak is minus 11, and that's not what we really want. We really want an RMS peak of around minus 6, minus 5, so with the equalizer. So basically around 30 hertz, you're going to want to cut that down. You don't really need those frequencies. And then band 3 is a bell. So around where the kick drum hits, where the sub bass is going to hit, I'm going to lower it with a slightly wider Q. Now I can see here that my mid-range is sort of lacking. So So right there we've done just a little bit of subtle EQing. And a lot of people think you need to high pass everything after 16, but you really don't, because it's not taking up a lot of space. And if you've mixed your hats correctly, they shouldn't be interfering with the high end, because your hat should really only be playing from around 9,000 onwards, 9,000 hertz and onwards. So you're not really going to have to worry about your high end that much. So let's hear it again. So here's it without my little EQing. And here's it with my EQ. Alright, look at that. So once that's done, I don't feel that this needs any kind of crazy compression on it. It doesn't really need any crazy kind of compression on it that I can hear. Let's solo this band. No. This song actually doesn't need multi-band compression, in my opinion. You might be opinionated differently. But now I'm going to check. And look how much headroom I have. Look how much headroom I have here to make it louder. Oh, by the way, turn on your true peak. And -0.2 is a streaming loudness target for true peak. The thing is, I don't want to over compress it because it is a super loud track anyways, so I do not want to over compress the signal, otherwise it'll get distortion, or I basically want to leave room for the streaming services to either raise or lower their volume if they really need to, instead of squashing it against the limiter. Because what happens if I squash it against the limiter is that it's going to have to be toned down because it's not conforming to the standards of the streaming service, so it's how do I put this? It looks a lot louder than it actually is, if that makes sense. You're getting a lot of inaudible signal that you're pushing against the limiter for no reason, and it's the loudness wars, but who wants to win those anyways? Listen how loud that sounds. Look at our RMS value right there. -5.4. That's a pretty great RMS. It's between -5 and -6, and that's really what you're aiming for dance music. Now I know I mentioned -14 LUFS earlier, but here's the difference as I understand it. RMS is an output of is a number regarding how much power the speaker is actually outputting, while LUFS is an actual calculated perceived loudness value. So let's check our LUFS. So it's at -9 LUFS. And the way I understand it is that it's going to be turned down to -14 LUFS on services that actually turn the loudness down, like Spotify, or I think YouTube even does some, but it's not going to need to be compressed to be made louder is the main thing we're looking for, because that can cause distortion where you don't want it. If you ever listen to super low or super high frequencies on YouTube, for a matter of fact, it won't play them, it'll compress them because they are too loud. All right. So that's about it for mastering this song. You saw how easy it was. Remember, mastering isn't really a fix for a bad mix. It's just that final little bit on top to make it cohesive. Your mix should really already be done. All you should really need is a little bit of EQ and a little bit of maximization and possibly some compression if you didn't already take care of it in the mix. But this is essentially how you should master a song to make it loud. Is watch your RMS peaks, watch your true peaks, and watch your LUFS. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to see you next time.